Hi there. Good morning, I believe. The time is at your part of the world. My name is Adema and I work at the OECD, and I've been invited by the conference organizers to say a few words about sole parent policies in the rest of the OECD. This is not easy doing this from afar. Some of you will know that I quite like Wellington. I would have loved to be with you. As far as the conference goes, the program looked really interesting, and I would have loved the opportunity to communicate with many of the participants and talk about the existing stage of New Zealand policies and policies across the OECD. We'll only have a few words to say. I do not want to go on with my presentation. I also know that Peter Whiteford, amongst others, is with you, and he will be speaking in this session too. Let me just show you where the main focus of my presentation will be on. There is the issue of benefit dependency among sole parents in New Zealand as in other countries. This causes concern because it has effects on public budgets in terms of income supports that have to be paid. It has an effect on labor supply, unutilized labor, staying for a long time on benefits and outside the labor market affects human capital, deteriorating labor market skills. And it has an effect on the chances on living in poverty, and with that you start to touch upon child well-being and child development and chances for kids to do well and to get a good start in life. So those are all very interesting and very important topics. Now, where does New Zealand stand out a bit compared to other countries is that they have a system of categorical income support for sole parents. It is specifically targeted at sole parents, and in other countries this is organized differently, and I would like to touch upon some of the lessons that these policies in other countries may hold. I fully appreciate that this is a very important topic, and I could talk about this topic and touch on many other aspects than the ones I will be touching on here for a while, but for the interests of time, I will focus on these two topics. I could raise very important issues on and discuss very important issues on teenage sole parenthood, but I will not raise those issues. I could talk more about financial incentives to work for sole parents, but I have assumed that Peter will also do that. So let me just focus on the things I just mentioned. The other thing which I would like to tell you is that because this presentation comes to you by video link, I've decided for the clarity of the presentation to only present 4 or 5 countries in any chart on a slide. That doesn't mean that the information isn't available for the other countries, but that's just for purely presentational reasons. A couple of outcomes. New Zealand has a relatively high proportion of kids living in sole parent families. Together with the UK, it is quite high, considerably higher than the OECD average, which is around 15% of all children. Compared to the other countries, and then particularly the Anglophone countries and one of the Nordic countries, Finland, which I've selected here, compared to Finland, the poverty rates among sole parents among children is are relatively high. That shows that the Nordic model, which Finland has been taken as a representative here, is very good in getting parents into work and also provides a universal support. And the two actors together limit the chance of poverty to about 5% for kids. which is relatively low in an OECD perspective. As you can see, child poverty rates in Ireland, in New Zealand and the UK are considerably higher. The other feature is that child poverty is relatively high in Anglophone countries, and one of the reasons for that is that poverty rates are relatively high for sole parent families, particularly when the sole parent is not in work. As you can see here, the difference between poverty between non-working sole parents and working sole parents may not be as high as in other countries, but it is quite significant. Almost the poverty rate for non-working sole parents is almost twice as high as for working sole parents in New Zealand. So sole parenthood, a key thing which of course you knew, leads to a high poverty risk for them and for their children. Now, one of the ways out of poverty is employment, helping parents to provide for their own family and support them in such a way that they have the possibility to engage in the labor force. And I've put on this chart the countries, the Anglophone countries, which are different from the other countries because they have categorical sole parent support, and then we're talking about United Kingdom, Ireland, New Zealand and Australia, and because, as we will see on the next slide, their employment rate is relatively low. Still, if you look over time, you can see that employment rates among sole parents have increased in New Zealand and Australia, and also in the UK, when the economic growth was strong until 2007-2008. You see a strong growth of employment rates among sole parents, and in Australia that may also have been related by announced reform on which we will come and talk about. As you can also see that in Ireland the sole parent employment rate, which was the highest in 2000 for these four countries, is now the lowest, and that has also has to do with the weakened economic performance of the Celtic Tiger, but also with the benefit system which doesn't generate strong expectations on sole parents to go and participate in the labor force, but allows them to stay on income support and categorical support for prolonged periods of time. As I said, if you compare employment rates between these Anglophone countries, which have a separate almost sole parent support system, and Finland, but also other Nordic countries, then you can see that the sole parent employment rate, which are indicated by the blue bar, are relatively low in the Anglophone countries, about 10 to 15 percentage points below, for instance, Finland, but also below the OECD average. If you look at the female employment rate in all the Anglophone countries, is considerably higher than the sole parent employment rate, which suggests the strong impact of the benefit system on non-labor force participation of sole parents. Now, why is Finland doing so well? Why is Sweden doing so well? What is going on there? Now, as I said, all these countries have relatively low incidences of joblessness, and